Speaking of bad language on the internet or anywhere else, remember when this was the reason that Lefty said that the Voice referendum went from 60-40 yes to 60-40 no?
Misinformation.
Misinformation.
The misinformation.
Up outrage, trying to start a culture war.
It is importing Trump-style politics.
Misinformation.
Misinformation.
Well, of course, the eSafety Commissioner, otherwise known as the E-Karen or the eSafety Karen or the Internet Karen, at the time was out and about saying there has been a major increase in the amount of not just misinformation but potentially violent threats that were being complained about by Indigenous people at the height of the debate around The Voice. Why am I mentioning this tonight? Because thank goodness for the Institute of Public Affairs, the IPA, because they were able to prove that was garbage. The woman in charge of policing misinformation on Australia's social media platforms has been accused of pushing misleading narrative about online abuse linked to the Voice referendum. Why? Because she said this.
It's pretty shocking that Indigenous youth experience online hate and online racism at a rate 3 times greater than other youth.
How many complaints do you think that there were from Indigenous Australians about cyber abuse relating to the referendum? I'll tell you. 2. Like literally 2 complaints. Yet the lady who would like to have the power, greater power to censor the internet, to tell you what you can and can't see, she's out there selling a narrative, and it's only, not because this was publicly released by the government, this is information that, by the way, was served up by the Institute of Public Affairs because they were able to peek behind the curtain, and guess what it showed? The eSafety Commissioner, E-Karen, wasn't telling the truth. She works for a government and is part of a system that would like to further censor the internet, so much so that if it's declared misinformation by the Australian Communications and Broadcasting Authority, you know, a bunch of Radio National listeners who would hate everything that we do and certainly anything that the great Kyle Sandilands would do, then it must be removed from social media platforms. If the social media platforms don't remove it, then hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of fines, and then eventually the social media platforms turn around and say, oh, look, let's just not post the links from the thing that everyone complains about. Now, the government, of course, would love to shut down people like myself, channels like this, times of broadcast like ours. But, of course, they couldn't possibly do it. So just like their 3rd pay rise in a row since the election, it's a completely independent process, in part administered by people who tell, well, falsehoods like that. Or is that misinformation too, Karen?